MMA is a growing sport all around the world. We've all heard of promotions like UFC, Bellator, and One Championship, but we've never seen a Bangladeshi fighter in any of those promotions. But are we about to see a Bangladeshi fighter going into one of these promotions in the future? Today we speak to Shaj the Superman Hawk about his first title challenge in Cage Warrior 158. Shaj, welcome
Yeah,
to the show. How's it going? How does it feel to be the champion, the first ever Bangladeshi champion to be in any circuit?
Alhamdulillah.
How does it feel?
Yeah, Alhamdulillah, it feels great. I'm honored to be able to pave the way for more young athletes to be able to hopefully in future do the same. And I think I'm just trying to just inspire the youth to try to believe in themselves a little bit. I've got other Bangladeshi fighters that I train in the UK here, and I really think some of them will be achieving hopefully the UFC or just as successful as I am.
Okay, so before there's obviously you spoke about UFC there. Before we get into that topic, I would really like to talk about your title challenge. So in Rome, fighting against Michele, I think that's how you pronounce his name. How
Yes.
was it? What was it like, your first title defense and coming out fighting, going the whole 5 rounds, and then after the fight in the interview, you were saying you could go another 5 rounds. So like obviously sounds like you've worked a lot on your stamina and your ground game as well. Looking at the highlights, how did it feel to actually defend the title? And could you run us through the last bit of ground and pound game? What you have worked on?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was a tough challenge fighting abroad in Rome. It's also a lot hotter than here in the UK as well. So I had a lot of different things to kind of prepare for. And he has a lot of support over there. So as you can see, when he was coming out, the whole crowd was screaming for him. I've done this before. I'm pretty experienced. So I was ready for that. And he's a tough fighter, and I knew it was going to be a tough fight. So I trained really hard for this, like I always do. I was very ready for this fight. The flight there was actually very difficult because we ended up missing our flight because of delays and things. So there was lots of things happening. Alhamdulillah, once everything settled down, I was still ready. It didn't affect me for the fight. Once we got in the fight, if you watch the fight back, it went 5 rounds. I didn't think he was going to last 5 rounds. I thought he would slow down more. He was quite fit as well. But I've got the best fitness in the cardio in the whole division. So I was very confident that in every round that went by, I will get better. I will get stronger. And then, as you've seen, when he got desperate near the end, he tried to take me down again, and he wasn't able to do that. He did that to his last opponent, who was actually bigger than me. He took him down, and he was ground and pounding him, but he couldn't do that with me. I was a little bit too fast for him as well, and I think people underestimate my level of technique as well that I have. I heard that the commentator saying that the fight was close, but although it looked close sometimes on camera, I came back in the end of the fight thinking I didn't take a single punch. I took 2 punches in the whole fight on my head. One that landed there and one that landed somewhere around here. Two in the whole fight that I remember. And I come to my corner, I was like, how are people saying this is a close fight? Because I'm not actually getting hit. But it's because he was coming forward lots and he was swinging lots of big punches. But then I was doing a lot of counter punching, and unless you're an experienced fighter, it's hard to see counter punches landing. But then all you see is his face going red and red, but you don't see the punches that I'm hitting him with. So it was a really good fight, and I really enjoyed it.
The last bit I saw was like he had you against the cage, and he had one of your legs, and he was trying to take you down, but your defense was so strong, you actually reversed it and you took him down instead. Could you walk us through that moment, please?
Yeah, so I did like a single leg defense. So I'm actually very good at that when people grab my like one of my legs and they try to take me down. So he shot and he went with everything he had because it was near the end of the fight and he was very desperate to win. And then I felt that, so I just stayed calm and I kept my balance. And then when I felt him really going for the takedown hard, I just turned at the same time. It was just a lot of timing there as well. And I just felt his balance go and I just fell on top of him. But he was quite good. He stood back up. I tried to keep him down and try to like land more shots, but he was quite strong. He stood back up, and then we ended up disengaging and having like a stand-up exchange after that.
Speaking of stand-up exchange, your title fight with Sam, you guys were virtually on the ground, like you were standing up for most of the fight. So what was the difference between fighting a fighter whose main arsenal is standing up and fighting, then rather than fighting someone who's trying to take you down and take you down to the ground, where obviously he's going to try to restrict your arms and he's going to try to restrict your legs. So like, what are the difference in preparation, and what was it like fighting two different style fighters?
Yeah, so when I won the biggest difference in both of them fights, because a lot of the fight was still stand up, although my opponent was trying to take me down. The big difference is the way they fight. So when I won the title, Sam Creasy, he was fighting very like counter style. So when I would come forward, he would go backward and he would try to land punches and he would try to hit me. He'd try to set up traps. Whilst this opponent that I fought now, Michele, he was coming forward all the time. He was very aggressive, coming forward all the time. So I was working a lot more of my counter punching with him. So I was fighting while I was going backwards with him. Whilst when it was Sam Creasy, I was trying to go forward a bit more. So if you watch the fights, you'll see I'm moving forward a lot more against Sam Creasy. He was quite tricky. He was setting lots of traps, which is why if you watch the fight, he did actually clip me once twice, and I hit the floor. Like I slipped over, hit the floor, which is very frustrating, and I was making me a little bit angry as well that he caught me off. Which is also how I set up that timing for that punch, and I ended up knocking him out because he was timing me, but as he was timing me, I was trying to start to time him. And then it was just that's how it happens in fights. It's very small margins. I timed my right hand as he tried to time his left hook, and my right hand was faster than his, and I'm getting the knockout. This opponent was a little bit more tricky to knock out because he kept his hands, like his chin down a lot, and he was swinging lots, and he was quite tough. I was trying to hit him, and I was hitting him, but he wasn't like it was harder to kind of get like a knockout type of punch on him. It was hard to land that clean punch. But instead, I landed lots of damage, and you've seen his face; it was very red, and he had a lot of blood on it.
Of course, when you're fighting somebody with really good defense, it's kind of hard to land punches. That's kind of expected, right? But moving on a little bit, so you were fighting for Cage Warrior. You were the first ever Bangladeshi Cage Warrior champion. So looking back at Cage Warrior, obviously, I come from a place where fighters like Conor McGregor came through, and Conor McGregor actually came through Cage Warrior. And obviously we got fighters like Peter Quilley, who's from the same town as me. So like I've seen fighters, they come up, they do really well in the national circuit or smaller promotions, and then they go on to do big things. Obviously Conor's done that something like astronomical, right? As a fighter who's gone through Europe, who's gone on to dominate the world circuit. Like whether it's for good reasons or bad reasons, that's a different story. Do you see yourself going on a same journey? Is it PFL Europe next, Bellator or UFC? Which one are you looking to go on to next? Obviously, you were number one in UK and Ireland as well in flyweight, right?
Yeah. So I actually just seen just earlier today on the Fight Matrix rankings. I'm actually number 37 in the world rankings, so it's just pretty good in the entire world. So I was quite happy to see that. So I've gone climbing up the rankings on there. But yes, like my aim is always to be in the UFC. I want to be a UFC world champion, and that's always been the goal since I started like fighting. But I'm real with myself, and you never know. The fight game is very political. Sometimes you don't get the shots that you feel like you deserve. So I'm not sure. I'm trying. My manager's working on it. Hopefully, the UFC give me an opportunity. It'd be so amazing to be the first Bangladeshi fighter in the UFC. I think for the country and the sport growth on that side of the world, it could be huge. But I'm not sure at the moment. I'm still fighting. I'm still training. I'm just enjoying this moment as well. I don't want to think too much about what's next. I want to try and enjoy it. I've had a big fight there. I've got another little one coming as well. So I've got lots of things happening. So I'm just trying to enjoy this moment. I'm going to see what my manager can get. And inshallah, it is a UFC shot. If it isn't, maybe I'll defend this belt again. And maybe I'll get another opportunity, like you said there, maybe PFL, Bellator, ONE FC. Hopefully something else comes if UFC does not. So I'm keeping my options open. But whatever happens, I want to try to become the best I can be. That's always been my goal as an athlete. I don't, a lot of people are like, oh, do you want to be UFC champion? Of course, I want to be UFC champion. But me as a fighter and a person, my goal has always been to be the best that I can be. So that when I retire and I've done it, I say I tried my best, and this is how far I got. And then I can hopefully inspire my students that I teach to try to do better than that. Because I really believe all you can try to do is to be the best you can be. So you got to train hard, you got to work hard. And then if I can be the best I can be, I'll get as far as I can get, and then you have less regrets that way. So I'm just trying to enjoy the process as well. Sometimes if you get too focused on the goal and the rewards of getting there, you forget to enjoy these moments. I've still had a really big win. Now, whether I get the UFC or not, I've got to enjoy this. It's fantastic. It's still a really big achievement. And I'm going to see what's next. And then I just enjoy fighting as well. I always have to remind myself sometimes, because it's my job as well now. I have to remind myself I enjoy fighting. I get to do what I love to do as a job. So, alhamdulillah, that's a blessing in its own way as well.
Do you have anything you would like to say to anyone who's trying to make it into the MMA circuit, from Bangladesh or even the Asian circuit. Obviously, we don't see that many Asian fighters in the MMA game, other than kickboxing. You know, that's a different story. But you know, the actual MMA Asian fighters don't seem to go up that next level. There's not many. So what would you
I
say
think
to
the
them?
sport is yeah. So I get some messages from some young Bangladeshi athletes asking me things like, "Oh, what can I do to become a fighter like me?" and things like that. And it's really nice to get the messages. But I think the problem that we have, I think, with a lot of them is that they just want to be this UFC fighter and they don't understand that they haven't even trained yet to really know what's happening. It's like trying to, you can't just be a doctor because you just say, I want to be a doctor. You actually have to learn a little bit before you realize, yeah, maybe I want to be a doctor. So I think sometimes some people think too much about the end goal. Like when I started for the first 5-6 years of training, I trained and I always wanted to be, a UFC fighter, but I was doing it because I wanted to be fit. I want to be able to defend myself. You have to do it for other reasons because also as soon as you think that it gets hard, you don't want to do it anymore. So for me, I did it when I was young. I started just doing it just because I was small and self-defense. If you ever someone like one, I actually got punched in the streets when I was a young kid, and then that made me realize that I need to learn how to defend myself. And I think I'm having those kind of goals, and I want to get fit, get strong. So those are sometimes the better things for them to do. But it's also the other thing is to try to always be like proactive. So and not be so much like, oh well, I can't train with the best in the world, so I can't be the best in the world. Yeah, that's a bad mindset sometimes. I think Bangladesh, the sport's growing. It's kind of where this country, like when I first started, it was like that. In this country, there was very few MMA gyms. In fact, there was next to none. Because I think we were one of the first ones in our area that was an MMA gym. So what we had to do, what people did was they trained kickboxing in some kickboxing gyms, they trained grappling in some grappling gyms, and then they just put it together and then they would try to compete in MMA. And over time, these athletes that did that, they became MMA fighters. So then when they were like myself, so then when I opened a gym as I got older, it became an MMA gym. And I think Bangladesh needs to do a little bit of that. I think the athletes that are there and the coaches, they need to just keep building the sport. They can't expect a UFC fighter to come out of Bangladesh right now, but maybe if these athletes now pave the way in the future, then in a few years' time, the next generation, I definitely think they can be. So I just hope that the young ones that are doing the sport now, they don't look at someone like Conor McGregor and think, I want to be Conor McGregor. That's not the best route to go. I think they just need to train and try to be as best as they can be. Keep learning. There's lots of content on YouTube and things now. You can buy DVDs of some of the best coaches in the world. I've done that before. I've actually bought a DVD of some high level wrestling coaches and things. So even myself, I'll learn from these people. And when you don't have the knowledge, there's lots of things you can use resources. So I try to tell the youth to try to use the resources that they have. The internet's fantastic if you use it correctly, but it's terrible if you don't use it very well. So that's my best advice that I can give them is that not to aim too much for UFC straight away. Just train to be the best you can be the best in the country that you're in, and then and then try to help the next guy that's lower than you to become even better than yourself. And that's how naturally, the sport evolves. And that's what I do. I'm trying to get the best as I can be, and I'm coaching my students to try to be better than me. And then I tell them to try to help the next guy to be better than them. And naturally, that creates a very good system to create champions in the future.
Champ, thank you so much. That's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know you're a father. You're looking after your kids right now. So best of luck. Obviously, best of luck for your future and everything. And thank you so much for taking the time to speaking to us.
No. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all, Shaj. Have a good one. We just spoke to Shaj about his first title challenge, about all the challenges he had to face during the match, inside and outside the cage, and what was his aspiration for this fight and what he hopes to achieve in the future. Hopefully, he will be a shining star in the MMA world of Bangladesh.